Hello and welcome back to the Cook Memorial Public Library Podcast. I'm your host, Nate Goss. This is the second episode in our Great American Reads series where a library staff member shares a PBS Great American Read they recently discovered. Today, I've asked Aspen Drive manager Brooke Bonson to talk about reading Ghost by Jason Reynolds. Welcome, Brooke, to the podcast.
Hi, thank you.
So, you're here to talk about a book called Ghost, which has won a ton of awards. I think it was like a National Book Award finalist. It's a Caudle nominee. Mm-hmm. And he himself has won a ton of awards as well. Can you just tell me why you chose to read Ghost as your PBS Great American Read?
Sure. I started hearing about Jason Reynolds and that he was a good author. And in trying to keep up with middle school age level books to recommend to kids here at the library, I like to choose some every now and again. So I picked this one off the shelf and was pleasantly surprised.
You mentioned in there that this is actually a book targeted towards youth, which isn't true of actually a lot of the PBS Great American Reads. So it's nice to be able to highlight and feature something that's written for children. Do you read a lot of books in general for younger patrons?
I would say average. Not a lot. Probably a children's librarian would read a lot more, but I do enjoy they're quicker, easier.
Sure, that is something that's nicer about them. Well, would you mind maybe just providing us a brief description of what the book is, just for our listeners who don't really have any familiarity with Ghost?
Sure. So Ghost is actually a nickname for a young boy whose name is Castle Cranshaw, and he's in 7th grade. He lives in a place called Glass Manor, which is kind of a rundown part of town. And you find out in the first chapter, so this isn't a spoiler, he and his mom had to flee their home one night because his dad was pointing a gun at them. And he ran to the local convenience store, hid in a storeroom closet, and until the police arrived and his dad was taken to jail. So the whole story takes place after this event has happened, where he discovered he could run. Unfortunately, because of a tragedy running from his father, but he wanted to join a track team, and kind of a typical 7th grade boy with a big ego thought, well, all you do is start running, and I can beat all those kids out there. But pretty soon he learns that there's more to just running. You have to have form, you have to stretch, you have to be a part of a team. So he joins a local team led by a coach who really becomes a role model for him. And he meets some new friends. He's having trouble in school, and he's really protective of his mother since that event happened. So the book really just talks about a typical 7th grader going through a rough time.
And this is a book that's the first actually in a series called the Track series, and I think it's followed by Patina and Sunny. And have you read any of the other books in the series at all?
I did. I immediately put book 2 on hold.
Okay.
Because the team really forms around 4 newbies, and Ghost is one of the 4 newbies. So it's Ghost, Sunny, Lou, and Patty, and those will be the 4 books in the series.
So there's still one coming even. I guess, considering that you're already moving on in the series, that means that you must have enjoyed Ghost. But do you want to talk a little bit more, like what was your initial reaction reading the book for the first time?
Sure. I think the way Jason Reynolds wrote the book really describes kind of what a middle school kid is going through. Emotions of anger with parents, emotions of bullying at school situations, friendship situations, trying to figure out their path in life. He wrote relatable, using language that kids may use in school.
If you watch his video interview on the Great American Reads show, which we can link in our show notes, he talks about writing in his own voice, and the show actually kind of compares it to J.D. Salinger, but that he's using, especially in the dialogue, the language that he grew up with, that he is used to, which, he's African American. He grew up in Brooklyn. So what was that like, reading something that is probably different from your experience or from the language that you're used to?
I think it's really important to read outside of your culture and to picture yourself walking a mile in other people's shoes. So this is definitely a story of a neighborhood very different than from what I grew up, a family very different than my family. And it just gives an insight to people may be going through things that you have no idea about, and whether or not they appear put together on the outside, it might be some struggles that they're experiencing. And I really think this book opened my eyes to kind of the positive role models that are important in kids' life, even if they are missing a parent, even if a parent is not present or in jail, there are still opportunities for kids to succeed, whether it's through sports, school, neighborhood, friends, family. So it did help to see a story different from what I've grown up with.
So what would you say to someone who's maybe an adult listening to this who really doesn't have any desire at all to read a children's book, but you seem to have found a lot of value in it as an adult?
I say just give it a shot. I was pleasantly surprised that a children's book was on the list, and sometimes for people who haven't developed a habit of reading yet or want to try something new and different, it's an enjoyable read. I finished it in about 3 hours. So
yeah, there you go.
You don't need a lot of time, but it does it. And I think as adults, when we are reading children's books, we probably have a different take on it than an actual middle school student reading a children's book.
Yeah.
So I do think as adults, it is important to kind of read from that perspective and read stories about youth.
Yeah, one of the things I really liked is I went on Jason Reynolds' website, to prepare for this interview, and he has in his About section kind of where he's coming from and who he's sort of targeting when he's writing. And one of the quotes he had that I really liked was, he said, here's what I know. I know there are a lot of young people who hate reading. I know that many of these book haters are boys. I know that many of these book-hating boys don't actually hate books, they hate boredom. If you are reading this and you happen to be one of these boys, first of all, you're reading this, so my master plan is already working, wahahaha. And second of all, know that I feel you, I really do, because even though I'm a writer, I hate reading boring books too. And I thought about that as, if you were ever someone who didn't know if you should read a middle school book as an adult or whatever, maybe even just reading it because this is a person who is, at the end of the day, just trying to write a book that's not boring.
Right.
and actually speaking more about Jason Reynolds as a person, he's also a poet. And he talks a lot about finding inspiration in rap music, which caused him to begin writing poetry at 9 years old. But did you notice that at all in Ghost, how that background in poetry and rap music might have influenced the writing at all?
I really did. I think it flows, even using language that you might not call proper English.
Do you have an example or something dialogue that you could share?
Well, he does mention when he's talking about criminal records, he says, what do they call criminal records? Not criminal records. They call them something else. Rap sheets. Yeah, that's it. Rap sheets, which is such a dumb name because it makes me think of rap music. Like maybe a rap sheet is what rappers write their rhymes down on. But yeah, rap sheets. I got one of those. Not a real one, though. One that real criminals have. Nah. I got a school rap sheet. But in a school, they call it a file. I got a file. And even though I've never actually seen it, it has to be pretty big because I'm always being sent down to the principal's office or put in detention or suspended for shutting people down for talking smack. So it's very lyrical, it's very poetic, it's very...
Like wordplay is in there a lot, and that's great. So do you, this is the ultimate question, do you think Ghost deserves to be on the list, and why or why not?
I do. I think the book will be hard to beat all the other great books out there, just because it is rare to have a children's book compared to adult books. But I think the intention of the Great Reads was to expose people of a diverse set of books, diverse time periods, whether it's present day, historical, and different backgrounds. So children, adults, different cultures, and I'm really happy that it is on there.
Yeah, it sounds like I still need to read it, but I definitely, after we talked about it and this being your choice, I have it on hold to definitely check out.
Great.
And I'm excited to read it. I haven't read any Jason Reynolds before, and even going on his Twitter today, it just seems like such a positive voice, very inspirational, and I just think he's a great voice to have in American literature.
I thought of that too. He's inspiration for especially African American men to see, you can be a successful writer, and it's good to have people of color writing and winning awards.
And he's so realistic about it too, because he also talks about it being something that he loves to do, but also his job. So he talks about the discipline of writing every day and the work that is involved in that, and that nothing's ever been just handed to him. And
that's interesting, because that's kind of reflected in one of the characters, Coach Brody, who says he loves coaching. He would do it all the time, but it doesn't pay the bills, so he also drives a cab in his off time. So
wow. Yeah, and then that in itself can be motivational in its small way. Yeah. Now, I wanted to ask, before we go, if you have any, if you don't, that's okay. If you have anything, or if someone maybe did read Ghost and they want something that's similar, but maybe from a different author, do you have any read-alikes that you would recommend someone go next?
For middle school and older, and definitely adults, the book The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas would be one of my top recommendations. That also gives you a picture of a life that maybe some of us would never imagine experiencing. So it feels the same as this book, but with a very different subject matter, but still a great read.
All right. Well, Brooke, thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing your Great American Read.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so if you would like to check out Ghost or any of the track series by Jason Reynolds, we'll help you check this one off the list. We have the books in regular print or ebook, and audiobooks in CD format and e-audiobook. Head on over to our website, cooklib.org, and search the catalog or just click the link in our show notes. If you want to learn more about the PBS Great American Read, you can check out their website at pbs.org. You can also stop into the library and pick up one of the checklists to see how many you've read. Before we go, I want to mention our blog, Shelf Life. It is the easiest place to see what our librarians are up to and what they are reading. Like Joe Hanson's recent post all about the mystery genre and attending the recent BoucherCon Mystery Convention. That blog and post can be found at shelflife.cooklib.org. And of course, don't forget you can talk to us anytime. You can talk to us on Twitter at Cook Library, or you can send us an email at webmaster@cooklib.org. If you enjoyed this episode or you like this podcast, please continue to share it with others and let them know they can catch future episodes by subscribing in Apple Podcasts or anywhere that they like to get their podcasts. We will be back soon, but until then, keep reading, keep watching, and keep listening.